الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. Brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. As the brother mentioned, we are commemorating the death of a person who will be remembered for many generations to come. He's a person who sacrificed the most important thing for any humankind, which is himself, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's a person who went through much hardship in his life, and with this hardship is this person who published in philosophy, he published in economics, he published in mathematics, he published in many different scientific areas, and he was an expert in these areas while he was going through a journey of oppression against tyranny. Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr is definitely a unique figure, and we all shouldn't leave this world without actually contemplating about his life, about what he has actually done, about what he has produced, about his personality as a person, about what ideas that he's come about if you have problems with proving the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, then go back to Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. If you are very much into economics and want to think about how you can build the right economic structure, especially with how the world is going through an economic disaster at the moment, then go back to Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. If you have issues about religious issues that are quite contemporary, then again go back to Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. He seems to be a person who is an all-rounder. And not just that, if you look at his personality, he was a person very, very pious, very modest person. And there was one particular story where when he was on house arrest, the people who were responsible for this house arrest, the people of the Ba'ath party, he used to come out and give them some water to drink because it was hot weather and things. So he was very kind even to the enemy. And that sort of tells you that he really practiced the attributes and the characteristics of our Imam alayhim salam. But today, alaykum salam, today we're not really going to talk about Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. I'm not here today in University of Ottawa to talk about Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. I'm here today to talk about his sister, Al-Alima Bintul Huda, Amina Bintul Huda. Because not a lot of people really know about this figure, this person who was a real champion for women in Islam. And I greatly encourage not just our sisters must go and read about her life and what she really did for Islam, but also our brothers as well. Because when I went back and tried to research about her life, I was really, really astonished to find that this particular person really stood up for what is really important, which is women's rights in Islam. Now, today's question, if you like, is, are women oppressed in Islam? It's such a typical question that a lot of people come up with, and they say in the media, they keep on talking about women's oppression. Islam allows for, the hitting of women, has oppressed the women through the hijab, etc., etc. But I haven't really come and seen concrete evidence from certain people to argue against what these people claim, that Islam does really oppress women. But before we actually delve more into this particular question, we would like to talk first about Bintul Huda and how she tried to approach these issues. Bintul Huda, just to give a very quick introduction to Amina Bintul Huda, she was born in Kadhmiya, Iraqi city of Kadhmiya, in 1937. And she was the sister of course, of Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, this family of really pious people, of scholars that really aspired to become really important people in society and to guide society towards the right way. Amina Bintul Huda was no exception. And importantly, she always had the backing of her father, of her brother, Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. When she tried to do certain things that are against the norm in Iraq at that time, she always had the backing of her brother. What Amina Bintul Huda wanted to do was try to explain to women mostly, and also to men, that what was going on in Iraq at that time, which was an example of how the Arab culture and the Eastern culture used to affect marriages and traditions, etc., was that this is not the right way. The right way was the Islamic way. So, as you may know, in Iraq at that time, women were very truly oppressed. So they were only told to stay at home. Women were not allowed to enter mosques. Women were not were restricted to getting out. So basically, it was just like a prison. A woman, men believed that a woman was created so that she stays at home, deals with the kids, cooks food, all these typical things that a lot of people talk about. Not allowed to go to mosque. I don't know why. Maybe she's sort of impure to come to the mosque. And really not come out in society, and don't do anything in society except your job is to stay at home and do nothing. And that was the mentality of a lot of men. So that was the norm at that particular time. But Amina Bintul Huda, when she was also a young girl, she started to think about all these things and thought, surely that's not right. My belief, my religion does not allow such a thing to happen. Surely not. So she went on to educate herself with her support from her brother Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. She went on a journey to try to find out, what does really Islam tell you about women? Is it really true that Islam says that that women should stay at home, men can actually hit women, women are oppressed, this hijab is compulsory on women, that it doesn't sort of give them the freedom that they want, etc., etc. So she really went into a journey, and it was very important. I stress the importance of her brother's support, because sometimes she went through times where she was very much left alone. This movement of anti-women movement in Iraq was very strong, and sometimes they tried to wipe her off. But Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, being a very strong character, stood very much against them and supported his sister. So what she did was, at the start of her journey, after believing that Islam really truly respects women, and it's not what these people actually practice, she said, I have to do something about it, right? And let's just pause at this moment. Bintul Huda found out there's a problem in society, right? Where men are oppressing women. It's not Islam is oppressing women, it's more like men are oppressing women, right? It's the understanding of men at that time, even at this time. I've been to Iraq several times, and I'm not just talking about Iraq, I'm pretty sure it's in other places as well, that even at this time, men still have such a mentality. So she thought that after investigating and finding the true identity of a woman, of a sister, she formed a women's group called AhlulBayt. Now that's very interesting, because in 1959 she had 42,000 members, and a majority of them, I think, were women. If you look at 1959, and I actually, when I read that, I thought, 1959, I don't think they had computers, right? I don't think they had anything like, they can connect. Probably phones were quite new at that time, and probably only rich people had the phones or something, all right? So how did she get all these 42,000 people to be members? 42,000 people. And I ask this question, if someone wants to organize a women's activity, or a men activity, or whatever, an activity, even through Facebook and Twitter and whatever, can you get 42,000 members? It's very difficult, even at this time. But it shows you that she had so much support from the women's side, because they were waiting for a leader to come and rise in society. They really wanted someone to come and champion what they really thought that Islam is all about. And once she came out and said, sisters, we have to get up and do something about this, then they all very much supported her, regardless of what their husband said, right? So she gathered around 42,000 members in an organization called Al-Rabita. But then again, what she thought of doing is she thought of publishing journals so that she can make people understand about the true meaning of women's rights in Islam. So there was a journal called the Da'wah Al-Islamiyya where she published many papers there. And I just have 3 points that just taken from these journals that she stressed out. The first point is she encouraged Muslim women to open their hearts and minds to Islamic principles, and she assured them that Islam is the answer to counteract both the loss of morals resulting from Western ideas and the backwardness, the tahajjur of Eastern ideas. That's very important. If we just try to concentrate on this. She thought that you don't really need to take fully with the Western ideas, nor you need to fully take the Eastern ideas. Right? You don't need to sit at home and be a slave to your husband 24/7, nor you need to get out in society and compete with men 24/7. There is a third way. Right? And we really can practice this now. There is a third way. Number two, she reminded her readers that the Prophet's daughter, Fatima alayhi salam, she chose her own husband, because at that time, and even now unfortunately, we have in the East that a lot of women are sort of forced to get married to a particular person and things like that, because they say, especially in the Shia faith, they say, no, the father says, no, I need you to get married to a Sayyid, right? Because he's the descendant from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she said, no, because this is not what's the benefits of me marrying a Sayyid? Because if she's a Alwiya and things like that. I actually gave a talk in a university in London about this, about descendants, and I got a question from them, and there seems to be something that is happening in London as well. It seems to be something is happening that the fathers seem to be rejecting certain men who come and propose to their daughters because they're not a Sayyid. A Sayyid, of course, is someone who's a descendant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, by the way, this has no foundation in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, and He says the humankind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He didn't make any difference between any humankind. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, we have created you different sects so that you can get to know each other. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ, He didn't say the best amongst you is a Sayyid, or the best amongst you is a Shi'i, or the best amongst you is a Sunni, or the best amongst you is a black or white. Atqakum, He said. The best amongst you is the one who is pious. Allah doesn't care. And He did not say the best amongst you are men. And He did not say the best amongst you are women. He said the best amongst you are the pious, even if it's a woman or a man. So, number three, so she said Fatima chose her own husband. That's number two. and later stood up for her rights. Fatima stood up for her rights, even though it meant confronting the male power structure. And that's very, very important, especially for the sisters. You must confront the male power structure, because the male power structure seems to be quite dominant in certain aspects. If you do not stand up for your rights, Islam has given you all the rights, and inshallah we will just mention just a few, not to take a lot of your time. I know it's a bit late, but you must stand up for your rights. And not standing up for your rights, you know, la samah Allah, you make some sort of trouble in family and says, no, I've got right, but in the right way, like how Bintul Huda did. Number 3, she also pointed something very interesting, which a lot of maybe sisters will say, no, that's not important, but I really liked it, because it really gives you sort of an angle, a different angle to who really women are. She pointed out that mothers are the natural first school for children. She called those who insist women should not be involved in public affairs extremists, right? And asked why they impose restrictions and boundaries not written in the Quran. Why is it that when we confront our sisters, we tell them that you being a mother is better in certain circumstances than if you get out and work and compete with men? If you be a mother, this is a privilege for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you something that you are very much, you should be honored with. Being a mother and raising up children is very much a full-time job. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you more than getting out. But however, this is very much an Eastern idea. I don't want to confuse you here. I've just supported this statement of sisters being mothers, but also I still think this is a fully Eastern idea. We will, inshallah, give an alternative. Just also a few other points about Bintul Huda. She also conducted, it's called Tuesday Conversations, where what she did was a theological roundtable with a group of university women. Fantastic stuff. I say to my wife, who's a doctor in London, right? When she goes out in hospital and she treats patients, she sometimes gets ugly looks, right? From people saying, who are you to treat me, right? But I still think that with not an oppression, she's not going through an oppression of any kind, but still in these circumstances where sometimes she gets these bad looks, and her becoming very patient and smiling to this particular patient, that she will get much, much more thawab than if she was to stay at home and do nothing about it. Because once she gets out in society, she's an ambassador to Islam. Sisters in universities, in colleges, at work, you are an ambassador to Islam. If you sit down and do circles between yourself to try to educate yourself, especially about women's rights, and coming out and answering questions about why you wear this hijab, and if a sister doesn't wear any hijab, then perhaps she can educate herself into why she's not really wearing her hijab, right? Then you stand in a very, very powerful position when someone comes and asks you, what is this scarf that you have on your head, right? You stand a very strong position into answering what's going on. So she had this Tuesday conversation. She never stood still. She never waited for someone else to come and motivate her of any kind. She always thought that I'm going to stand for women's rights. And that was her main goal. She didn't really do many other things. She focused on one particular thing. That's why, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. It's not that Bintul Huda couldn't do it. Bintul Huda was a teacher as well, and she used to write fictional books and things. But she focused on one main thing, which is to champion women's rights, especially at that time in Iraq, right? And we must not forget that, brothers and sisters, right? It's not, this lecture is not for sisters actually, it's for mainly brothers, but also sisters as well. Because I find the problem mainly is that men do not understand the rights of women in Islam, so therefore oppression. But also women don't understand their own rights, so therefore they accept the oppression. And that's what Bintul Huda came out. She said, look men, understand, this is what Islam tells you. Look women, understand, this is your rights, get out and fight it. And she did that through storybooks, which is really amazing, isn't it? You think someone who wants to come out and talk about women's rights, you publish a book. Typical. At that time, you publish a book. But she thought ahead. Even now, there aren't a lot of people who publish storybooks. I think, well, what storybooks? Be serious. Publish a book. Call it an Iraqi aib. Publish a book, right? But no, she said, no, I will write storybooks for children as well and for adults. I will write storybooks. And throughout her storybooks, she conveyed these messages. Through these storybooks, she conveyed her messages. It's a beautiful thing. If any of you has this potential of writing storybooks, why wouldn't you? Because storybooks seems to attract people more than just reading a particular book. Because a particular book, be honest, is a bit boring, isn't it? You just open it and read introduction and blah blah, and then you go over. And for me, it's boring anyway. I'd rather read a storybook. But her storybooks went also very deep. I don't like reading storybooks that, that thick. It was very concise, up to the point, beautiful. And they are online. If you go to alislam.org, a very famous Shia website, and you type Bintul Huda stories, you can get them online and you can read them online. So even what I found also was Bintul Huda also gave time to other issues, nothing to do with Islam, bringing people together. And she also conducted painting classes for adults as well, adult women, and arranged an annual exhibition of their work. Beautiful, isn't it? Don't you think? That a person who's has such a mind that is not very closed-minded person, who didn't really sit at home and do nothing. She came out in society and said, women, you can do art as well. And we're going to show off our art to everyone. We have skills, and Islam allows us to go out in society and do these things. And of course, she was also a revolutionist. After she saw Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr going through hardship, and all of you know what Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr went through with the Saddam tyranny. When the last time Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr was taken to prison after house arrest, she came out very angry to Najaf in Hadrat Imam Ali, right? And she came out and shouting, Unsuru Baqir al-Sadr. She kept on shouting, everyone come and try to free Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. She was shouting in front of men, women, she doesn't care. She said, principle. This is a principle I must do. I'm going to free my brother, even if it means I sacrifice myself. And that is exactly what happened. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made her a martyr. The army, the Ba'ath people came and took Bintul Huda, and she was never seen again. Even we don't even know where her grave is now. If you go back to Iraq and you speak to people, where is Bintul Huda's grave? They tell you, I don't know. People say she was put into acid, where her body sort of dissolved in acid. That is Bintul Huda. She stood up all her life. And by the way, Bintul Huda didn't get married. I don't know why. Probably she didn't even have time for marriage, right? But that doesn't mean you discourage people to get married. But she didn't probably have time to get married, because she was a woman who spent most of her time, if not all of her time, trying to champion women's rights in Islam. And she succeeded to a large extent. Now, just very quickly, I have a quote from Bintul Huda, and we just want to focus on one particular thing. She says that Muslim women are confused by the erroneous understanding of Islam and their daily exposure to Western ideas, right? So she says their choices is two, usually. A Muslim woman, especially now also, her choices is two. One is to stay at home with no chance of social achievement, right? She just stays at home, takes care of kids, blah, blah. It's mostly an Eastern idea, as we said. Number two, to become a Western woman. So get out and you compete with men to acquire your rights. Important. Because at home you don't feel, in society you don't feel you are getting your rights. So you get out and compete with men so that you can get your rights. Because you feel trapped, you're not really getting your rights. Bintul Huda says there is a third option, and that is the Islamic option. Islamic option tells you that yes, as a woman you have full rights, regardless of what men interpret things. You have a lot of rights, but it's just all about trying to take a bit of that and a bit of that and exercising your rights in Islam. So she says that to enable women to exercise their rights, there's two things that is required, and it's extremely basic. Number one is women need to be educated, as we mentioned, in Islamic rights. I ask you, sisters, if I was to come and ask any of the sisters, do you actually know your rights in Islam? Would you say yes or no? If you say yes, then that's excellent, because you can come out in society and defend your rights. If you say no, then you must go and find out what is your rights in Islam. But what's important is you do not go out and take the wrong sources, because there are different sources that talk about women's rights in Islam and says certain things that of course are unfounded in Islam at all. You must go back to the right sources and eventually go back to the Quran to find out what has the Quran said about Islam. That's number one. Number two, men understand about women's rights in Islam, because the problem comes also from men. If women were respected in society by men, then we don't have any problems at all, right? In the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, men and women are equal. Definitely equal. In the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah does not distinguish between man nor woman. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given certain responsibilities for the man and has given certain responsibilities for the woman. And so therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects that the man achieves or fulfills his responsibility and the woman fulfills her responsibility. Each gender has their own responsibility. Men don't try to do women's responsibility. No woman should do men's responsibility. I didn't know that it will be that. It's very easy for me to point like this. That's excellent stuff, right? So we shouldn't try to do each other's responsibility. Each gender has their own responsibility, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects us to fulfill our responsibility. Now, I will just take a few more minutes of your time, just mentioning four points about how Islam respects the rights of a woman. And this is a bit of, perhaps, you can use this as, if a Western person comes in, or someone who's non-Muslim and comes in and says, oh, Islam has oppressed women and things like that. First of all, I'd just like to say this, by the way. Perhaps some people do believe that Islam is oppressed women, right? Even if they go through evidence and things like that. So therefore it is very important on you to try to convince yourself first, has Islam oppressed women or not? I don't believe it has. And then from the evidence I will tell you, I don't believe it has. But certain people, I'm pretty sure, are very much convinced that Islam has oppressed women. and will continuously oppress women. So it is your duty, like Bintul Huda's duty, to get out in society and try to change that, if you believe that Islam has not oppressed women. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us all from a single being. Ya ayyuhan nas, from the first ayah of Surah An-Nisa, right? Surah An-Nisa, the first ayah. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس. What? Everyone's asleep? 10 o'clock is the time of من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها. Allah created us, created you from a single being. And who's that single being? Definitely you're asleep. Adam alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us from Adam and created its mate of the same kind and spread from these two many men and women. خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها, men and women. وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. Right? واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام. So the fundamental point here, brothers and sisters, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us from a single being. Surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just when He comes and judges men and women. Surely, because He's created us from a single being. Otherwise He was created the man from a man and a woman from a woman. Right? But He's created us from a single being. That's number one. Number two, as we mentioned a bit previously, men and women spiritually and in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are very much equal. So there are a few ayat here to prove that. In Surah Al-Hujarat, ayah 13. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. O you men, surely we have created you of a male and a female, and you made you tribes and families that you may know each other. Surely the most honorable of you with Allah is the one among you most careful. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And they have rights similar to those against them in a just manner. This is about a woman. They have rights similar to those against them in just manner. Surah Ghafir, ayah 40. وَمَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةِ. It's a very simple equation. Whoever does good, whether you're a male or a female, doesn't matter, and he is a believer, that's very important, he is a believer, they shall enter paradise. كل نفس بما كسبت رهينة. Every soul, did not say every man, nor he said every woman, every soul is held in pledge for what it earns. من عمل صالحا فلنفسه ومن أساء فعليها. He didn't say ومن عمل صالحا for just a man will get it. Whoever does good, if it is for his own soul, and whoever does evil, it is against himself. للرجال نصيب مما اكتسبوا. What's after that? وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا اكْتَسَبَنَ. Men shall have the benefit of what they earn, and women shall have the benefit of what they earn. It's exactly the same, but it's just different responsibilities we have. One other very important thing that we always remember is that Islam fought against the inequality of women in society that occurred before Islam. You all very well know that at the time of Al-Jahiliyyah, before Islam was introduced, women were buried alive. There was actually a story, I can't verify that story 100%, but I heard the story, that a woman gave birth to a girl at that time before Islam, and the woman, the mother, hid the girl from the father because she knew if she tells him it's a woman, he'll go and bury her alive. So she hid her until that girl became around 13, 14-year-old. Then suddenly the father found out, and he found out this is his daughter. And so what happened then is he took her forcefully and he had to bury her, and she was actually begging him not to bury her. But he took her and he buried her alive. Because that is what they found out. And this is what this ayah tells us. It's a very beautiful ayah. I was telling my dear brother Aban Hakim about this ayah, and I really, really but I really find reading surah, you can see that I always try to give verses from the Quran. There are a lot of hadith, and I truly believe in that hadith. But if you have the Quran fulfilling something, then you should mostly focus on the Quran. The Quran says in Surah An-Nahl, ayah 58 to 59, وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. And when a daughter is announced to one of them, his face becomes black and he's full of shame. When he tells you, oh, you've got a daughter, it becomes shameful. يَتَوَارَى مِنَ الْقَوْمِ مِنْ سُوءِ مَا بُشِّرَ بِهِ أَيَمْسِكُهُ عَلَى هُونٍ أَمْ يَدُسُّهُ فِي التُّرَابِ. He hides himself from the people because of the evil of that which is announced to him. So he takes the daughter and he hides from people, in case people ask him, what happened there? What have you got there? In case people ask him. يَتَوَارَى مِنَ الْقَوْمِ مِنْ سُوءِ مَا بُشِّرَ بِهِ. With the bad news that he's just received. Shall he keep it with disgrace? أَيَمْسِكُهُ عَلَى هُونٍ. And then, or do what? أَمْ يَدُسُّهُ فِي التُّرَابِ. Or should he bury it alive within the dust? Look at the Quran, it says أَمْ يَدُسُّهُ فِي التُّرَابِ. يَدُسُّ means you stamp on it. Take the baby girl and you put her on the ground, you stamp on her and you bury her alive. أَمْ يَدُسُّهُ فِي التُّرَابِ. See, Quran just talked about what has happened. Quran hasn't actually said anything about it, but just with 3 or 4 words explains everything. أَلَا سَاءَ مَا يَحْكُمُونَ. Now surely evil is what they judge. He just said it in a few words. أَلَا سَاءَ مَا يَحْكُمُونَ. Islam came and fought against such a habit that people had of when وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. This is Quran says that al-maw'uda, this is a girl that was buried alive. If al-maw'uda, you ask her, why were you buried alive? She wouldn't know. She hasn't done anything. بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. What has she done? What sort of sin has she done so that she's buried alive? And this is what Islam came in to try to tackle against that. And by the way, even recently, I have here that I've written, till recently Christian scholars in Spain engaged themselves in discussing whether women, like men, possessed human souls or not, and whether or not their souls will continue to live eternally after death. So this discussion about women and things like that wasn't just in before Islam, it was also in Christianity and they say recently, I don't know when recently was. So the respect of women, Islam came in and gave full respect to women, and he said women and men are equal. The final point, and I promise that's the final point I will mention, is just a few ayat, verses from the Quran. You see how Quran has protected the women. Surah An-Nisa, ayah 24, فَأْتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ فَرِيضَةً. Give them their dowries as appointed. Now, I can talk a lot about the benefits of how Islam has given so much right to women. about dowry, you know, the woman is given dowry, but the man isn't given dowry, considering that the man has to spend for the family and the woman doesn't, and things like that. Of course, there are other issues, such as men take double the women for inheritance, but the reason why they take doubles because they have a family to feed, and a woman can save that money and can spend it only for herself. So there are a lot of these arguments. I didn't want to get into these discussions, but I just wanted to, I think there's enough ayat for today. But I think what the main issue for us to understand is Bintul Huda, take her as our role model. As men, we take her as a role model as well. And she came out in society to try to prove to everyone that Islam respects the woman as much as it respects men. Women should understand their rights. You should understand what Islam has given you in terms of rights and responsibilities, and man should really understand their right, the woman's rights as well, because the oppression of women is eventually being done by men. And she said women shouldn't really sit at home like the Eastern style and just take care of children and things, although this is a very important thing. You can do that. No, she should go outside like the Western style where she competes with men so that she can get her rights. She can go the third way, which is try to understand the Islamic rights. And what is these Islamic rights? Islam tells you, yes, by you being a mother, you will get a lot of thawab for, but you must also get out in society. You should get out in society. Not you must, but you should get out in society, and you should do something in society. You should do amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Because your role as sisters, men cannot do if they go out in society. You can actually also do certain aspects where men also are not doing it. Do not feel that you are just, your area, your surrounding is just your home. Your area of surrounding should be your home. You shouldn't be just in society. That's the misconception that we have here. A lot of women, the new millennium women, right, think that no, I'm not going to stay home. No, I'm not staying home. I'm going out. This is what Bintul Huda is saying. Bintul Huda is saying, don't be one of those that you just want to get out and compete with men. No, you're going to be those that just stay at home. Try to maybe balance. I say this, try to maybe balance. Stay at home, look after your kids, etc. But still, and again, try to get out in society and work for society. And with that, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us understand our responsibilities in life, and for us to follow the teachings of our Imam, and also follow the teachings of Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr and his sister Bintul Huda. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين. Because not a lot of people really know about this figure, this person who was a real champion for women in Islam. And I greatly encourage not just our sisters must go and read about her life and what she really did for Islam, but also our brothers as well. Because when I went back and tried to research about her life, I was really astonished to find that this particular person really stood up for what is really important, which is women's rights in Islam. Now, today's question, if you like, is, are women oppressed in Islam? It's such a typical question that a lot of people come up with, and they say in the media, they keep on talking about women's oppression. Islam allows for, the hitting of women, has oppressed the women through the hijab, etc., etc. But I haven't. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin wa ala ahli baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. As the brother mentioned, we are commemorating the death of a person who will be remembered for many generations to come. He's a person who sacrificed the most important thing for any humankind, which is himself, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's a person who went through much hardship in his life, and with this hardship is this person who published in philosophy, he published in economics, he published in mathematics, he published in many different scientific areas, and he was an expert in these areas while he was going through a journey of oppression against tyranny. Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr is definitely a unique figure, and we all shouldn't leave this world without actually contemplating about his life, about what he has actually done, about what he has produced, about his personality as a person, about what ideas that he's come about if you have problems with proving the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, then go back to Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. If you are very much into economics and want to think about how you can build the right economic structure, especially with how the world is going through an economic disaster at the moment, then go back to Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. If you have issues about religious issues that, well, I haven't really come and seen concrete evidence from certain people to argue against what these people claim, that Islam does really oppress women. But before we actually delve more into this particular question, we would like to talk first about Bintul Huda and how she tried to approach these issues. Bintul Huda, just to give a very quick introduction to Amina Bintul Huda, she was born in Kadhmiya, Iraqi city of Kadhmiya, in 1937. And she was the sister of course, of Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, this family of really pious people, of scholars that really aspired to become really important people in society and to guide society towards the right way. Amina Bintul Huda was no exception. And importantly, she always had the backing of her father, of her brother, Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. When she tried, are quite contemporary, then again go back to Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. He seems to be a person who is an all-rounder. And not just that, if you look at his personality, he was a person very, very pious, very modest person. And there was one particular story where when he was on house arrest, the people who were responsible for this house arrest, the people of the Ba'ath party, he used to come out and give them some water to drink because it was hot weather and things. So he was very kind even to the enemy. And that sort of tells you that he really practiced the attributes and the characteristics of our Imam alayhim salam. But today, alaykum salam, today we're not really going to talk about Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. I'm not here today in University of Ottawa to talk about Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. I'm here today to talk about his sister, Al-Alima Bintul Huda, Amina Bintul Huda.